everybody, welcome to the first. It's July 10th, jeez, 2024. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks for being here. It's a big day for Golf News Net, big day for me personally. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. We're going to talk about Rory McIlroy speaking in front of the press today ahead of the Genesis Scottish Open. Some interesting things that he said and kind of came up over the course of that time in front of the media this week. He is the defending champion at the Renaissance Club in North Berwick. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. And then we'll talk about the big news of the week, maybe my lifetime, at least professionally speaking. But we will get to all of that here with you today. So before we get into that, thanks to Swannies for being our presenting sponsor this year. Check them out at swannies.co. Get a hold of some of their great pullovers and hoodies. Their hoodies are incredible. Their polo shirts are great. Great pairs of shorts for this time of year. Use the promo code GolfNewsNet25 to save 25% on your first order. So Rory McIlroy is back. And he's going to be speaking in front of the press. He took a couple weeks off post U.S. Open, post disappointment of the U.S. Open, post Bryson winning the U.S. Open, and he had some questions to answer. Right? I mean, he kind of scurried out of Pinehurst as soon as the fate of the tournament was decided, and that Bryson DeChambeau had won. And for all we know, there wasn't going to even a terse handshake between the two. And McIlroy pretty quickly left the Pinehurst clubhouse, went to the parking lot, got out of town in his courtesy car from the tournament, got to his plane, was on his plane. I mean, within minutes. I mean, it's not that far from Pinehurst to the Pinehurst Southern Pines Airport, but that was still pretty impressive to be able to do that. Got out of town, then just kind of went on social, did the thing athletes do nowadays when they have to issue a mea culpa or a statement. They opened up their iPhone, they opened up the Notes app, typed something, screenshotted it, and sent it out and said, hey, I'm not playing in the Travelers. I'm going to regather myself, and we'll see you again at the Genesis Scottish Open because he's the defending champion. I'm not entirely convinced that if he weren't the defending champion, he'd be playing this week, but he is playing this week as the defending champion at the Renaissance Club. And again, got in front of the media, had the news conference. I think a lot of people were looking forward to that and said some interesting things. And we'll go over those here in just a minute. But what I found most interesting about the whole tone of everything was not that it was overly defensive. And I didn't expect him to be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I did everything wrong kind of thing. You got the mixture of typical McIlroy. You got honesty. And I think we don't have the quotes for those here. But the honesty that he talked about, Pinehurst number 2, I think is worth getting into. We'll do that in a minute. But also a degree of defensiveness that he almost innately has about himself and also about his caddy, Harry Diamond, who came under fire for whatever number of reasons in terms of how the group, the two of them handle the final, I would say 2 or 3 holes, and maybe even go back to final 6 holes of the championship, where McIlroy has the lead, loses the lead, and then ultimately gives it away on the 72nd hole and allows that opportunity for Bryson DeChambeau, which he took to win the tournament. I think the most interesting thing he said about the day of, the Sunday, that late Sunday afternoon in North Carolina, is that he let the moment get to him in a couple of different ways. The first way I think he talks about is how he changed his pre-shot routine, that he took longer to hit shots than he normally would, and that maybe threw him off a little bit. And I don't know if he got that from watching back tape, whether he just kind of talked about it, thought about it, what that was. But I do find that interesting because everyone responds to pressure differently, right? Some people get typically in golf, when you are under pressure, you get faster. You do things much quicker. You walk quicker. You're trying to get it done and over with because you don't like feeling what you feel and you want to get away from it. And the quickest way to get away from it is get the ball in the hole, get the walking done, get the shots done, do it. And he slowed down, and he thought he maybe slowed down to his detriment. The other thing that he said that I thought was interesting, and this is an architectural thing, that I don't think, well, I'm sure players think about it, but it doesn't probably normally come up in these kinds of look backs. And he talked about the architecture, especially of 16, 17, and 18 on number 2, that there were plenty of opportunities to see what Bryson was doing behind him. And obviously he could hear it at times too, and that it was distracting. And I got that sense in real time that McIlroy knew what was going on because you could hear it and see it in a number of places. And that gave him pause. That made him think, I'm under pressure. I need to do this now. Bryson's hitting great shots. Yes, he's making mistakes, but overall, he's probably playing better golf. I need to do this now, and probably applied some additional pressure to himself. And that may have ultimately cost him a chance to end a 10-year major championship drought. But then he was also very defensive of his caddy, Harry Diamond, who I believe was under criticism from everybody, but Hank Haney especially. And I thought that part was particularly funny because I don't think anyone really cares what Hank Haney thinks these days. I mean, no offense to Hank Haney, he's a gifted teacher, but uh, what's Hank Haney going to do here? What can he offer to Rory McIlroy's won 4 majors and a bazillion times around the world? And so I thought that what he said was pretty funny here, and you have it up on the screen. It says, "Quote: Someone said to me once, I would never take if you would never take advice from these people, your detractors, you would never take their criticism either. Certainly wouldn't go to Hank Haney for advice. I love Smiley Kaufman, but I think I know what I'm doing, and so does Harry Diamond, his caddy." And I think that criticism stems from the choice to hit driver on 18 and the decision making around the final hole, because he could have easily made par hitting a long iron out there, hitting the green. It's not a long hole, 2 putt, maybe you 1 putt, maybe you get away with it, and you hang on. But to put yourself in a position where you got lucky, you could even put the club on the ball and it kind of knuckle toward the green. That 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 may not have been the best choice, but I also understand why he made it. He's an aggressive player. He's always been an aggressive player and will always be an aggressive player. So when you get to the point where the championship is on the line, why aren't you true to yourself? And I think that goes back to McIlroy saying he got slower. Be true to you. You're trying to be yourself as much as possible in that moment, even though, and he talked about this, he felt a deep discomfort in that moment, especially on 16 and 17, where he kind of knew what was on the line. And I think it became much more evident that this was either going to be a one-shot difference or a playoff kind of thing. I'm fine with the decision to hit driver. That does not bother me. I think what bothers me is McIlroy knowing about himself that when he gets to the short ones, he has a tendency to lift up the blade and to hit above the equator and kind of leave the face open. And that's what happened on 18. That's a technical thing. That's nothing that Harry Diamond could have done for him. I don't think that you're guaranteed to have a safer putt for par or birdie just because you hit an iron off the tee. The statistical data tells you that's not necessarily the case, even if you're a world-class player. So for the people that were critical of his decision making, I mean, it came down to execution. He missed a 18-inch putt and he missed a 4-footer that moved a lot and probably should never put himself in that position. Should have been underneath the hole to make a simpler putt, which is the one that Bryson DeChambeau had to win after executing the 50-yard bunker shot. So I thought that was something worth defending, right? And he has always been a vigilant defender of Harry Diamond. At the end, I think we talked about this a little bit with Keegan Bradley, and I'm not trying to analogize entirely between being a Ryder Cup captain and a caddy, but caddies are important, and they can be extremely important in these kinds of situations. But at the end of the day, it's down to the player and what the player believes they need from their caddy and in that moment. And if the player thinks what they're doing is fine, then what's the caddy going to do? Tackle the guy and hit the shot for him? No. Eventually, it comes down to what the player does or doesn't do, what they do or do not execute. And I think that comes down to McIlroy. That said, I think you continue to talk about what is it like to kind of have that type of moment and then try to build upon it. And I thought this answer from him was super interesting because after the U.S. Open, I tweeted, I don't think Rory McIlroy is ever going to get over this. And I didn't mean that he'll never win again or that he'll never play good professional golf again. I didn't mean that whatsoever. What I meant was that this is a loss you will never not think about in kind of the Doug Sanders sense. I think I said it on Twitter at the time, but Doug Sanders in this Golf Channel interview in the early days, and I think it was with Peter Kessler, he he said, I don't, sometimes I'd go 15 minutes without thinking about the 2 foot putt that I missed to lose the British Open to Jack Nicklaus. And that is what I'm talking about. These are things you'll think about in the middle of the day randomly, and they'll sting and hurt really bad. I mean, I have no idea about you, but there are some times where I'm just out doing stuff, and I'll think about something stupid I said or did when I was in my 20s, when was just dumber than dumb, and it'll sting because I feel embarrassed about it, or I feel bad about it, or that was a missed opportunity, or something I wish I hadn't done. Nothing colossally horrible or evil, just something I wish I hadn't done. And if I think about that for just stuff that's mundane and probably the people involved don't even remember, how is it to think about things like this? Think about a US Open. Think about the ones that got away. And so this answer that he gave about scar tissue, I think is interesting. He says, quote, I still think about the short missed putt that I missed at Crancer-Sierre, which is in the Omega European Masters in Switzerland, in 2008 in a playoff. You think about all of them, and I was probably more devastated after that because it was my rookie year on tour. I hadn't won yet. I remember feeling really bad after that for like a good week. And then McIlroy goes on to say, I felt bad about this for several days, about Pinehurst, about the US Open, but that then at the end of the day, you realize what you do have. And that's how you move forward. Realize what you do have, not what you lost. Realize what you've gained, not what you didn't get. And to that end, maybe the reconciliation of his marriage, or the ongoing reconciliation of his marriage, wherever that is a benefit. Obviously, they've got Erica and McIlroy Rory have a daughter together. They've got that. They've got a good life. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, losing a major championship or still being worth $500 million, that's fine. That's a trade I think every one of us would make right here and now. If you said, hey, Ryan, you can have a $500 million bankroll, but you're gonna lose the US Open in devastating fashion a couple of times in your life. Like, yeah, sounds great. Sign me up. That's not me getting hit by a car. That's not anything horrible. I mean, that's okay. So if you look at the bright side that way, and I think he's trying to choose to look at it that way, as this week and Scotland is another opportunity. Troon is another opportunity. And if you try to take him as that and take positives away from getting in the fight again and getting awfully close, maybe that helps you the next time. Instead of thinking about all the ways you screwed it up, think about all the things that you did right. And I like that kind of view. And then the last thing McIlroy said, and he was asked about this, I think the last question or next to last question in the news conference was, do you feel bad that you didn't talk to us after the US Open, that you left Pinehurst and you didn't have a news conference, you didn't even talk to NBC or Golf Channel after the fact, you just bolted? And I think this is the right view that he offers, which is, quote, there's nothing that I could have said that was any kind of trails off. I mean, it would have been good because you guys would have been able to write something about it or have a few quotes from me. No offense. You guys were the left, or it really should be last, of my worries at that point. End quote. And that's fundamentally it right there. Being critical of him for not showing up, talking to the media, going, oh, I'm devastated. Oh, it's terrible. I wish I had missed that putt. Man, I really would have loved to have not missed that 18-inch putt, or the 4-foot slider, or maybe I shouldn't have hit driver on 18. I mean, basically everything he said today. What are you going to do with that? What's a better indication of how he feels than to say nothing? And a guy who normally stands behind the microphone and answers questions, to be so devastated that he just leaves and doesn't do that. I think that told me more about what I needed to know about how Rory McIlroy felt about the whole thing than him standing at a flash spot, just outside the clubhouse or whatever, and give me some platitudes, and that's it. I think it said everything. The video spoke for itself. And I know that doesn't always translate very well to the written word, and certainly silence doesn't translate very well to an audio format, but that told you what you needed to know. and you could interpret that for yourself, either through the lens of how you think McIlroy thought, or maybe from experience, what heartache feels like. So I thought those were some interesting things that came up. Um, I'm waiting to see what we got from Nelly Corda today. Speaking ahead of the Evian Championship in France, get a better idea about that. Probably talk about that on tomorrow's show. We did do a preview show with a friend Craig Thompson, talk about the Mundi Evian Championship. So if you want to check that out, I'll be retweeting that here after the show's over. It's an interesting look at the championship, not only from trying to pick winners perspective, but also just the history of the Evian, the 10 years of it being a major, now getting into that second decade, its place in the major championships, all kinds of stuff there that I think's worth a good listen. So last thing to talk about today is the big news that I've been teasing, I believe, on this show and in the audio version of this show and on Twitter and LinkedIn and all that stuff over the last, feels like forever, but the big news is finally here. And that is that Golf News Net TV is coming in just a few weeks' time. So either the last week of July or first week of August will be the debut of Golf News Net TV. Now, what is Golf News Net TV? Golf News Net TV, or as we will call it, GNN TV, is a 24/7 streaming linear TV channel that will be available on streaming platforms. So things like Roku or Pluto or Zumo or Philo or Fubo or Sling, those types of platforms. And they'll be available kind of across the board. We'll roll out with some here initially, and then we'll continue to scale up over the coming months throughout the end of the year. But the channel is going to cover the breadth of the game. So we'll have talk shows like this one with other people hosting as well, not just me. And we'll talk about the issues of the day, and they'll simulcast on Golf News Net Radio. And then we'll also have programming that's already airing on television. So a lot of the shows that we have partnered with, they're being created and aired on regional sports networks around the United States already, some internationally as well. And those are great, already made for TV shows that can have a bigger reach, bigger geographic reach with our partnership, with our help. And they cover all kinds of subjects. It could be instruction, could be travel, could be equipment. We'll have original programming as well, covering a variety of those topics, and some with brand partners that we've been working with behind the scenes. We'll be broadcasting live from some of the biggest golf tournaments in the world. Now, that won't happen at the 4 men's majors this year, but we'll have some details on the first of those big broadcasts coming relatively soon once we get the channel going, but very excited about that. And then we will also be showing golf competitions. Many of them will be live. Some of them will be recently aired. Some of them will be older as well in recent years to kind of harken back to maybe the current week's event in prior years. So we'll have that as well with a variety of tours and partners between amateur events, collegiate events, professional events from around the world. We'll have those on GNN TV as well, re-airs of those tournaments. So it'll be a place to showcase professional golf that doesn't always get its due. And certainly collegiate golf, that Golf Channel has done a great job of promoting with their events and the things they've put together for television over recent years. But we think we can augment that. We know we can augment that as well with additional coverage. And then also to kind of bring to light some of the cool amateur stuff that happens between state opens, international events, AJGA, and similar style junior tournaments. We'll have that as part of our air. I'm a big fan of long drive, so we'll have some long drive events, have a putting league. We've got a lot to show you on Golf News Net TV. So that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks as it debuts. We'll give you more information about where you can find Golf News Net TV when it debuts. At a minimum, it'll be available on golfnewsnet.com. So even if you can't find any of the streaming services we point you to, you can watch it at golfnewsnet.com. It'll be available as part of our OTT apps for Roku and Amazon Fire and Apple TV as we revamp them. So you'll be able to watch on those too. And there'll be many more ways to consume it as well. So we'll get that information out to you as we go along. But this is a 14-month project from conception to execution. We have an incredible partner and our friends at TVIQ who have done a lot of the big legwork in the industry to get us to this point so that we can get on these platforms and provide the programming. And we've got so many cool partnerships that we've made and are making to bring this to life so that we can be the channel for the golf obsessed, whether you play golf, whether you watch golf, whether you do both, and to give you a place where there's always something to tickle your fancy about golf. And that's what we want Golf Newsnet to be. Golf Newsnet TV to be. That's what Golf Newsnet Radio has been. And we'll continue to do that moving forward. So, big day, big celebration. A lot of wiping the brow today, but this is the end of the beginning. Lots more work to come. Lots more news to come on that front. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I appreciate it. We'll be back Thursday and Friday. We'll do audio shows, and then we'll come back next week. Monday, I'll be at Media Day for the Solheim Cup down at Robert Trent Jones Golf Club. So we may have something on tape, may have something live. We'll see how that works out. We'll try to do something there for you. And then Tuesday and Wednesday next week, probably will not be able to do shows, or if I do them, they will be from Nemacolin Woodlands up in Western Pennsylvania. So take a little media trip up there, have a couple of days of golf and fun, and getting to kind of rediscover a place that's actually not too far from where my in-laws live in Western Pennsylvania. Really cool spot. So looking forward to sharing that with you as well. Get a hold of me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com, on Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Ryan Ballingy, Facebook, YouTube, Ryan Ballingy Golf. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Catch you next time on Two Off the First.